When I returned from my study abroad semester in London, I expected to find my childhood bedroom exactly as I had left it. Instead, I discovered my parents had sold my room to my younger brother for his gaming setup. But they forgot one crucial detail that would change everything. What they did not know was that I had been secretly documenting their financial abuse for months, and the evidence was hidden right where they least expected it. The betrayal cut deep, but their oversight would become their downfall. Before we dive into this wild family revenge story, let me know where you are watching from. If this hook already has you questioning family loyalty, like I was, smash that like button and subscribe for more shocking family drama stories. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless about how far some parents will go and how sweet revenge can taste when justice finally comes calling. My name is Madison, and I had just completed an intensive international business program at University College London. The experience was supposed to be the highlight of my junior year, a chance to gain global perspective before finishing my degree. I had saved every penny from my part-time job for 2 years to afford the program working nights at a local diner while maintaining my 4.0 grade point average. My parents, Robert and Patricia Williams, had been supportive of my academic ambitions, or so I thought. The flight back to Chicago felt endless. I was exhausted but excited to share stories about my time in London, the incredible professors I had worked with, and the internship offer I had received from a prestigious consulting firm. I imagined sitting in my childhood bedroom surrounded by the familiar lavender walls and the study desk where I had spent countless hours preparing for this very opportunity. That room was my sanctuary, filled with academic awards photos with friends and memories that made me who I was. When I pulled into our driveway on that cold February evening, something felt different. The house looked the same from the outside, but there was an energy that made my stomach clench with unease. I used my key to enter through the front door, calling out to announce my arrival. My parents appeared from the kitchen, their smiles seeming forced and their eyes avoiding direct contact with mine. "Welcome home, sweetheart," my mother said, wrapping me in what felt like an obligatory hug. "How was the flight?" My father nodded awkwardly, mumbling something about being glad I was safe. Their behavior struck me as odd, but I attributed it to the surprise of my early arrival. I had managed to catch an earlier flight and had not informed them of the change in my schedule. "I cannot wait to unpack and tell you everything," I said, heading toward the staircase. "London was absolutely incredible, and I have so much to share." As I climbed the stairs toward my bedroom, I heard hushed whispers between my parents below. The conversation stopped abruptly when my footsteps paused on the landing. Something was definitely wrong, but I could not pinpoint exactly what it was. I turned the doorknob to my bedroom and froze. The lavender walls had been painted dark blue. My study desk was gone, replaced by an enormous gaming setup with multiple monitors, LED lights, and a racing chair. My bookshelves, once filled with classic literature and academic journals, now displayed video game collections and energy drinks. My bed had been replaced with a futon covered in comic book sheets. "What the hell is this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. My 19-year-old brother Tyler appeared behind me, grinning smugly. "Pretty sweet setup, right? Mom and Dad sold me your room while you were gone. They said you probably would not be coming back here much anyway since you are almost graduated and everything." The words hit me like a physical blow. "They sold you my room." "Yeah, for $3,000. I had been saving up for my job at the electronics store, and they said it was a good investment in my future." Tyler flopped onto the futon as if he owned the place, which apparently he now did. "They moved all your stuff to the basement storage room. Most of it anyway." I felt my knees weaken. "Most of it?" "Well, they donated some clothes and books to charity. Said you had outgrown kid stuff anyway." The betrayal was overwhelming, but it was not just about the room. As Tyler continued to brag about his purchase, the pieces of a larger puzzle began falling into place. My parents had been struggling financially for months before I left for London. There had been hushed phone conversations about mortgage payments, credit card bills, and something about my father's business failing. I had offered to delay my study abroad program to help with expenses, but they had insisted that my education was their priority. Now I understood the truth. They had used my absence as an opportunity to solve their financial problems by selling my personal space to my brother, who had no idea he was participating in something so fundamentally wrong. The $3,000 Tyler paid was probably used to cover immediate bills, and they had assumed I would simply accept the situation upon my return. But they had made a critical error in their calculation. What my parents did not know was that I had been quietly documenting their increasingly erratic financial behavior for months before leaving for London. I had noticed discrepancies in the family budget, suspicious transfers from my college fund, and credit cards being opened in my name without my knowledge. As an accounting major, I recognized the signs of financial manipulation and potential fraud. Before leaving for London, I had hidden a waterproof document case behind a loose baseboard in my bedroom closet. Inside that case were copies of bank statements, credit reports, forged signatures on loan applications, and evidence of my parents using my Social Security number to secure credit lines they could not qualify for on their own. I had planned to confront them about these issues when I returned, but I never imagined they would literally sell my room while I was gone. The irony was perfect. In their rush to convert my bedroom into a source of cash, they had created the ideal hiding place for evidence of their financial crimes. Tyler's gaming setup now sat directly above proof of his parents' fraud embezzlement of my education funds and identity theft. Standing in what used to be my sanctuary, I felt a cold clarity wash over me. The shock of seeing my childhood bedroom transformed into Tyler's gaming paradise was nothing compared to the realization that my parents had committed serious financial crimes against me. The evidence I needed was literally beneath Tyler's feet, hidden in a place they would never think to look. "I need to get something from the closet," I told Tyler, trying to keep my voice steady. "Whatever, just do not mess up my organization system," he replied, not bothering to look up from his computer screen where he was already launching some online game. I knelt down in the closet and carefully pried loose the baseboard I had modified months earlier. My heart pounded as I retrieved the waterproof case, grateful that my parents' hasty renovation had not extended to checking every corner of the room they were stealing from me. Inside the case, everything was exactly as I had left it. Copies of fraudulent loan applications bearing my forged signature, bank statements showing unauthorized transfers from my college savings account, and credit reports revealing accounts I had never opened. The evidence painted a clear picture of systematic financial abuse. My parents had been using my identity to secure credit for their failing business, draining my college fund to cover their personal debts, and manipulating financial documents to make their situation appear better than it was. The $3,000 Tyler paid for my room was just the latest in a series of desperate attempts to stay afloat financially, while destroying my credit and future in the process. I photographed every document with my phone, uploaded them to a secure cloud storage account, and carefully returned the originals to their hiding place. Tyler remained oblivious to what I was doing just feet away from him. When I stood up, he was arguing with someone online about gaming strategies, completely absorbed in his virtual world, while I planned my very real strategy for justice. I went downstairs, where my parents were sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to read the newspaper and scroll through their phones. The normalcy of the scene felt surreal, given what I now knew about their criminal behavior. "We need to talk," I announced, pulling up a chair across from them. My mother looked up with feigned innocence. "About what, dear?" "About the fact that you sold my room without my permission, used my Social Security number to open credit accounts, forged my signature on loan documents, and stole money from my college fund to cover your debts." The color drained from both their faces. My father started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I have documentation of everything. Bank statements, credit reports, loan applications with my forged signature. and evidence of unauthorized transfers from my education savings account. What you have done is not just morally wrong, it is criminal fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. My mother began crying immediately. Madison, you do not understand the pressure we have been under. Your father's business failed, we were facing foreclosure, and we only borrowed from your college fund temporarily. We planned to pay it back before you graduated. Borrowed? I laughed bitterly. You stole $22,000 from my education fund and opened 4 credit cards in my name without my knowledge. My credit score has been destroyed by accounts I never authorized. This is not borrowing, this is systematic financial abuse. My father finally found his voice. You are our daughter. We provided for you your entire life. We deserved some help during our difficult time. Help that I would have gladly provided if you had been honest with me, I replied. Instead, you chose to commit crimes against me and then sell my bedroom to my brother to cover your tracks. Well, congratulations, because your criminal activity is now perfectly documented and ready for the authorities. The kitchen fell silent except for my mother's sobbing. Tyler appeared in the doorway, having finally heard the raised voices over his gaming headset. What is going on down here? He asked, confused by the tension in the room. Your parents used your $3,000 to help cover debts they created by stealing from me, I explained calmly. They committed identity theft, fraud, and embezzlement, and now they are facing the consequences. Tyler looked back and forth between his parents and me, clearly trying to process what he was hearing. Wait, what they stole from you? I pulled out my phone and showed him photographs of the forged documents. They have been using my identity to secure credit they could not get on their own, stealing money from my college fund, and manipulating financial records for months. The money you paid them for my room was part of their scheme to cover their tracks. My brother sank into a chair, staring at the evidence on my phone screen. I had no idea. They told me you were okay with the room thing, that you had agreed to it before you left. They lied to you too, I said gently. You are a victim in this situation as well. My father suddenly became defensive. You have no right to threaten your own family. We made mistakes, but we can work this out privately. There is no need to involve outsiders. Outsiders. I stood up, feeling my anger finally break through the calm facade I had been maintaining. You mean like the police, the district attorney, and the credit reporting agencies? The same outsiders who will be very interested to learn about your criminal enterprise. My mother looked up through her tears. Madison, please, we are your family. We love you. Family does not commit identity theft against each other, I replied firmly. Love does not involve destroying someone's financial future for personal gain. You had choices, and you chose to commit crimes against me, rather than be honest about your problems. I walked toward the front door, turning back one final time. You have 24 hours to figure out how you're going to make this right. Full restitution of the stolen money, removal of all fraudulent accounts from my credit report, and a formal apology acknowledging your criminal behavior. If those conditions are not met, I will be filing complaints with the police, the district attorney's office, and every relevant financial institution. As I reached for the door handle, my father called out desperately, Where are you going to stay? I smiled for the first time since walking into that house. With people who actually respect me enough not to commit felonies against me, I drove directly to my best friend Sarah's apartment, my hands still shaking from the confrontation with my parents. Sarah had been my roommate during freshman year, and we had maintained our close friendship even after choosing different living situations. When I called her from the car, explaining that I needed a place to stay immediately, she did not ask questions beyond whether I was safe. Get over here right now, Sarah said firmly. I am making coffee and you are going to tell me everything. Sarah's apartment was a cozy one-bedroom in a converted Victorian house near campus. She worked as a paralegal at a downtown law firm while finishing her criminal justice degree at night. Her legal knowledge and connections would prove invaluable in the coming weeks though I did not realize it yet. As I sat in her living room, surrounded by law textbooks and case files, I told Sarah everything. I showed her the photographs of the fraudulent documents, explained the timeline of my parents' financial crimes, and described the shock of discovering my room had been sold to Tyler. Sarah listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed her legal training. "Madison, this is not just family drama," Sarah said when I finished my story. "What your parents did constitutes multiple felonies. Identity theft, fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and potentially racketeering if they have done this to other family members. Racketeering? I had not considered that possibility. If they have established a pattern of financial crimes involving multiple victims, it could qualify under RICO statutes. Do you have any reason to believe they might have victimized other family members?" I thought about my older cousin Jennifer, who had mentioned having unexpected credit issues when she applied for a mortgage last year. At the time, we had attributed it to clerical errors, but now I wondered if there was a more sinister explanation. "There might be other victims," I admitted. "My cousin Jennifer had some strange credit problems recently that never made sense." Sarah grabbed a legal pad and began taking notes. "We need to build a comprehensive case before we approach law enforcement. In my experience at the firm, financial crimes cases are much stronger when they demonstrate clear patterns of behavior and include multiple forms of evidence." Over the next 3 days, Sarah and I worked systematically to document every aspect of my parents' criminal behavior. We pulled my complete credit history, organized the fraudulent documents chronologically, and calculated the exact financial damage they had caused. The numbers were staggering: $22,000 stolen from my college fund, $14,000 in unauthorized credit card debt in my name, and additional fees and interest charges that brought the total to over $40,000. Sarah's boss attorney, Michael Rodriguez, agreed to review our documentation during his lunch break. Michael specialized in white-collar criminal defense, which meant he understood exactly how prosecutors would approach a case like ours. "This is textbook financial elder abuse, except the victim is a young adult rather than a senior citizen," Michael explained as he reviewed our evidence. "The systematic nature of the crimes, the forged documents, and the use of family relationships to facilitate the fraud make this a very strong case for prosecution." He recommended that we contact my cousin Jennifer to determine if she had been victimized as well. If my parents had targeted multiple family members, it would transform the case from individual crimes into a criminal enterprise. Jennifer lived about an hour away, working as a nurse while raising 2 young children with her husband David. When I called to ask if we could meet to discuss some family financial issues, she immediately agreed. Something in my voice must have conveyed the seriousness of the situation. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our locations. Jennifer brought David with her, which turned out to be fortunate because he worked as a forensic accountant for an insurance company. When I explained what my parents had done to me and asked if Jennifer had experienced anything similar, her expression changed from curiosity to horror. "Oh my God," Jennifer whispered. "Last year, when we applied for our mortgage, the lender found 3 accounts on my credit report that I had never opened. We disputed them and eventually got them removed, but it delayed our home purchase by 2 months." David leaned forward, his professional interest clearly engaged. "Do you remember what types of accounts they were?" Jennifer pulled out her phone and scrolled through old emails. "A department store credit card, a personal loan from a credit union, and a utility account in another state. We assumed it was identity theft from some random criminal." "Can you provide me with the account numbers and dates?" David asked. "I can run a forensic analysis to see if there are connections to Madison's case." Within 24 hours, David had confirmed our worst fears. The fraudulent accounts on Jennifer's credit report had been opened using applications that originated from my parents' home computer. The digital footprints were unmistakable, and the pattern of financial abuse extended beyond immediate family to include extended relatives. Sarah arranged for us to meet with Detective Lisa Park from the Financial Crimes Division of the Chicago Police Department. Detective Park specialized in family-related financial abuse and had successfully prosecuted dozens of similar cases. She reviewed our evidence with the thoroughness of someone who understood the complexity of prosecuting family members. This is one of the most well-documented cases of family financial abuse I have seen, Detective Park told us. The victims have done most of our investigative work already. However, I need to warn you that prosecuting family members is emotionally difficult even when you are absolutely certain they are guilty. She explained the process of filing formal complaints, obtaining warrants for financial records, and the likelihood of plea negotiations versus trial proceedings. The evidence was strong enough that she expected my parents to accept a plea agreement rather than risk a jury trial. What about restitution? Sarah asked. Full restitution is standard in cases like this, plus penalty interest and court costs. However, if the defendants do not have assets to cover the damages, restitution can take years to collect fully. Detective Park also recommended that we contact the FBI since the crimes had crossed state lines when my parents used Jennifer's identity in another state. Federal involvement would add additional pressure and potentially more serious charges. As we left the police station, I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The machinery of justice was now in motion, but I knew the hardest parts were still ahead. My parents would soon be facing criminal charges, and our family would never be the same. Tyler had been calling and texting me constantly since I left the house. His messages revealed that my parents had confessed everything to him after my ultimatum expired. He was devastated to learn that his beloved gaming setup had been purchased with money stolen from his sister, and he was desperate to find a way to make things right. They are talking about selling the house, Tyler texted. Mom has not stopped crying, and Dad keeps saying you have destroyed the family. Can we please talk? I agreed to meet Tyler at a neutral location, the same coffee shop where I had met Jennifer and David. Tyler looked exhausted when he arrived, clearly having lost sleep over the family crisis that was unfolding. I want to give you back the room, he said immediately. I know that does not fix everything, but it is a start. I had no idea they were stealing from you when I made that deal. Tyler, you are not responsible for their crimes, I assured him. You were manipulated just like I was. The difference is that you were not the direct victim of their financial abuse. But I benefited from it, he insisted. I bought your room with money they stole from you. That makes me part of the problem. I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes, and I realized that Tyler could become an important ally in holding our parents accountable. He had been living in the house witnessing their behavior and might have observed things that even I had not noticed. If you really want to help, I said carefully, there might be ways you could assist in ensuring justice is served. Tyler became an invaluable source of information over the following weeks. He had access to our parents' daily conversations, their phone calls with creditors, and their increasingly desperate attempts to find money to avoid prosecution. What I did not realize was that my parents were working behind the scenes to turn Tyler against me. 3 weeks after I had filed the initial police report, Tyler called me with urgent news. Madison, you need to meet me right away. I found something huge in Dad's office that changes everything. We met at our usual coffee shop, but something felt different about Tyler's demeanor. He seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact, and fidgeting with his phone in a way that made me suspicious. What did you find? I asked. Tyler pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table. These were hidden in Dad's filing cabinet. They show that you have been planning this whole thing for months, maybe even years. I opened the folder and felt my blood turn cold. Inside were forged documents that appeared to show me researching identity theft techniques, planning to frame my parents for financial crimes, and communicating with accomplices about how to falsify evidence. The documents were sophisticated forgeries, but they were convincing enough to create reasonable doubt about my claims. Tyler, these are fake, I said immediately. Look at the dates. Some of these are from when I was in London, and the computer activity they show is impossible because I did not have access to these systems. But they look real, Tyler insisted. And there are witnesses who say you talked about getting revenge on Mom and Dad for not supporting your career goals. My heart sank as I realized what was happening. What witnesses? Tyler looked uncomfortable. Some of your high school friends say you complained about Mom and Dad holding you back financially. There are text messages where you talked about making them pay for not believing in you. I knew exactly which conversations Tyler was referencing. Years ago, during typical teenage frustration, I had vented to friends about my parents' occasional reluctance to fund my academic ambitions. Normal family tensions that every teenager experiences had been weaponized and taken out of context to support a narrative that I was a vindictive daughter seeking revenge. Tyler, you know me better than anyone. Do you honestly believe I would spend months planning to destroy our family? He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw the truth. Mom and Dad said you have always been manipulative when you do not get your way. They showed me examples going back to middle school where you would create drama to get attention. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own brother, who had initially been horrified by our parents' crimes, was now helping them construct a defense based on attacking my character and credibility. They got to you, I whispered. They convinced you to help them. Tyler's mask finally slipped, revealing guilt and shame underneath. They are going to lose everything, Madison. The house, Dad's business, their retirement savings. Everything will be gone if you go through with this prosecution. They said if I could help create reasonable doubt about your claims, maybe the charges would be dropped. So you decided to betray me to protect the people who committed crimes against us both. They are our parents. Tyler exploded. Yes, they made mistakes, but you are trying to send them to prison. Families are supposed to forgive each other and work things out privately. I stood up slowly, realizing that my support network had just suffered a devastating blow. Tyler had not just withdrawn his assistance, he had actively joined my parents' defense strategy by helping them fabricate evidence to discredit me. Those forged documents you just showed me constitute additional felonies, I said calmly. Fabricating evidence, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You just made their legal situation infinitely worse. Tyler paled as he realized what he had admitted to. I did not fabricate anything. I just found documents that were already there. Documents that magically appeared in Dad's filing cabinet after I filed criminal charges. Documents that show computer activity from when I was in another country. Tyler, you just confessed to participating in a criminal conspiracy. I photographed every page of the forged documents with my phone before Tyler could stop me. Thank you for bringing these to me. Detective Park will be very interested to see how far our parents were willing to go to obstruct justice. As I walked toward my car, Tyler called after me desperately. Madison, wait. They said this would just create doubt, not cause more problems. They promised no one would get in trouble if we could just convince you to drop the charges. I turned back to face my brother one final time. Tyler, they have been lying to you just like they lied to me. The only difference is that you chose to help them commit more crimes instead of standing up for what was right. Driving back to Sarah's apartment, I felt more alone than I had since this nightmare began. Losing Tyler's support was devastating enough, but his active participation in my parents' defense strategy created new challenges for the prosecution. The forged documents were obviously fake, but they would still need to be investigated and debunked, which would delay the case and potentially create confusion for a jury. Sarah was waiting for me with Detective Park when I arrived at the apartment. They had been discussing strategy for the upcoming grand jury proceedings, but my news about Tyler's betrayal changed everything. This actually strengthens our case significantly, Detective Park explained after reviewing the photographs of the forged documents. Obstruction of justice and fabricating evidence are serious felonies that carry mandatory prison sentences. Your parents just graduated from financial crimes to actively interfering with a police investigation. What about Tyler? I asked. He admitted to being part of this. If he was manipulated by your parents and did not understand the legal implications of his actions, we might be able to offer him immunity in exchange for his cooperation. However, if he refuses to cooperate, he could face charges as well. The next morning, Detective Park arrested my parents at their home. Tyler called me in tears, begging me to help him understand how everything had gone so wrong. The gaming setup that had started this entire crisis was confiscated as evidence, along with my father's computer and filing cabinets full of financial documents. I never meant for this to happen. Tyler sobbed over the phone. They convinced me that helping them was the right thing to do for the family. Tyler, you still have a chance to do the right thing. I told him. Detective Park said they might offer you immunity if you cooperate fully and testify truthfully about what our parents asked you to do. But that means testifying against Mom and Dad. No, Tyler, it means testifying for the truth. The arrest of my parents made headlines in our suburban community. Local business owner charged with identity theft against daughter appeared in the regional newspaper, along with details about the sophisticated financial fraud scheme they had orchestrated. The public exposure added a new dimension to an already complex situation. Within 24 hours of the arrests, I received an unexpected phone call from someone who would change the trajectory of the entire case. Amanda Morrison identified herself as a victim advocate with the State Attorney General's office, who specialized in family financial abuse cases. Madison, I have been following your case through law enforcement channels, Amanda explained. What your parents did to you and your cousin appears to be part of a much larger pattern that we have been investigating for the past 18 months. Amanda requested a meeting at the Attorney General's office downtown. When Sarah and I arrived the following morning, we were introduced to a team of investigators who had been building a case against a network of family-based financial abuse schemes operating throughout the Midwest. Your parents are not small-time criminals, explained senior investigator David Kim. They have been part of an organized network that teaches family members how to exploit their relatives' financial identities while avoiding prosecution by leveraging family loyalty and shame. The conference room walls were covered with charts showing connections between multiple families across 3 states. My parents' names appeared in several locations, connected by lines that indicated communication and coordination with other perpetrators. We have been monitoring online forums where your father was active under multiple usernames, Amanda continued. He was sharing techniques for manipulating adult children's credit, avoiding detection by financial institutions, and using emotional manipulation to prevent victims from reporting crimes. She showed us printed screenshots of forum posts where my father had bragged about successfully stealing from me while I was overseas, offered advice to other parents about timing their theft to coincide with their children's absence, and shared strategies for turning siblings against each other when victims discovered the crimes. This is evidence of a criminal enterprise, Sarah observed. They were not just stealing from their own children, they were teaching other parents how to do the same thing. Exactly, David confirmed. Under federal RICO statutes, participation in an ongoing criminal enterprise carries much more severe penalties than individual financial crimes. We are talking about potential sentences of 15 to 20 years instead of 3 to 5 years. The scope of the investigation was staggering. The network had victimized over 200 young adults across multiple states, stealing an estimated $4.7 million from college funds, retirement accounts, and credit lines. The perpetrators had developed sophisticated techniques for avoiding detection and preventing their victims from seeking help. Many victims never report these crimes because they involve family members, Amanda explained. The emotional manipulation and shame tactics are incredibly effective at silencing victims and preventing prosecution. David showed us evidence of my father's leadership role in the criminal network. He had been one of the founding members of the online forum, had recruited dozens of new participants, and had received payments from other parents in exchange for detailed instruction on financial exploitation techniques. "Your father was not just stealing from you," David said grimly. "He was profiting from teaching other parents how to steal from their children. We found records showing he received over $30,000 in consultation fees from other network members." The revelation that my father had been monetizing the destruction of family relationships across multiple states was devastating. This was not just personal betrayal. It was systematic criminal enterprise that had destroyed countless families. "What does this mean for Madison's case?" Sarah asked. "It means her case becomes the foundation for dismantling an entire criminal network," Amanda replied. "Madison's evidence and testimony will be crucial for prosecuting not just her parents, but dozens of other perpetrators across multiple jurisdictions." Amanda explained that the federal investigation would provide resources and support that far exceeded what local law enforcement could offer. Federal prosecutors had extensive experience with financial crimes and would be able to present a comprehensive case that demonstrated the full scope of my parents' criminal activities. "We also have leverage that local prosecutors lack," David added. "We can offer reduced sentences to network members who cooperate fully and provide information about other participants. Your parents will face a choice between decades in federal prison or cooperation that might result in shorter sentences." The federal involvement also meant that Tyler's situation would be handled differently. Instead of facing state charges for obstruction of justice, he would be offered immunity in exchange for his testimony about my parents' recruitment efforts and the manipulation tactics they used to gain his cooperation. "Tyler was clearly manipulated by your parents," Amanda assured me. "Our investigators have seen this pattern repeatedly. Parents will sacrifice one child to protect themselves from the consequences of victimizing another child." Over the following weeks, the federal investigation moved with impressive efficiency. Search warrants were executed on my parents' home business and electronic devices. The evidence recovered included detailed financial records correspondence with other network members and instructional materials that my father had developed for teaching financial exploitation techniques. My cousin Jennifer's case was integrated into the federal investigation, along with evidence from dozens of other victims whose cases had previously been handled as isolated incidents by local law enforcement agencies across multiple states. "The network was more sophisticated than we initially realized," David explained during one of our weekly briefings. "They had developed legal strategies, accounting techniques, and psychological manipulation tactics that were specifically designed to target family relationships. The evidence was overwhelming. My parents faced federal charges under RICO statutes, along with individual counts of identity theft, fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. If convicted on all charges, they would face mandatory minimum sentences of 25 years in federal prison." "Are they going to accept a plea agreement?" I asked Amanda. "Their attorney has indicated they might be willing to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. However, cooperation would require them to provide complete information about the criminal network, testify against other participants, and submit to extensive financial disclosure." The prospect of my parents cooperating with federal investigators was both encouraging and terrifying. Cooperation might result in shorter prison sentences, but it would also require them to admit the full extent of their crimes and face the consequences of destroying so many families. "What about restitution?" Sarah inquired. David smiled for the first time since we had met him. "Federal restitution is much more comprehensive than state-level recovery. We can seize assets, garnish wages, and pursue collection through multiple mechanisms. We have already frozen your parents' bank accounts, placed liens on their property, and initiated asset forfeiture proceedings." "Does that mean Madison will actually recover her losses?" "Full recovery plus penalty interest and legal fees," Amanda confirmed. "Federal financial crimes prosecution is designed to make victims whole while ensuring that perpetrators cannot profit from their crimes." As I sat in that conference room, surrounded by evidence of my parents' systematic criminal behavior, I realized that this case had evolved far beyond personal family drama. We were dismantling a criminal enterprise that had destroyed hundreds of families and my willingness to seek justice had become the foundation for protecting countless future victims. 6 months after I had returned from London to find my room sold and my identity stolen, my parents stood before a federal judge to receive their sentences. The courtroom was filled with other victims of the criminal network, many of whom had found the courage to come forward only after learning about the federal investigation through news coverage of my case. Tyler sat behind me in the courtroom, having fulfilled his cooperation agreement by providing detailed testimony about our parents' manipulation tactics and recruitment efforts. His testimony had been crucial for demonstrating how the criminal network exploited family relationships to avoid detection and prevent reporting. Your Honor, the defendants orchestrated a sophisticated criminal enterprise that victimized over 200 families across multiple states, stated federal prosecutor Maria Santos. The evidence demonstrates systematic financial exploitation, identity theft, and conspiracy that destroyed family relationships and caused millions of dollars in damages. My father's defense attorney argued for leniency based on his cooperation with federal investigators. My parents had provided extensive information about other network participants testified in grand jury proceedings against their co-conspirators and submitted to complete financial disclosure that had helped prosecutors recover assets for victim restitution. While the defendants' cooperation has been valuable, Judge Patricia Williams responded, "The scope and duration of their criminal activities require substantial accountability. The court must send a clear message that financial exploitation of family members will not be tolerated." My father received a sentence of 12 years in federal prison with eligibility for parole after serving 10 years. My mother received 8 years with parole eligibility after 6 years. Both sentences included provisions for supervised release, mandatory financial counseling, and permanent restrictions on their ability to access credit or financial services. The defendants will also be jointly and severally liable for complete restitution to all identified victims. Judge Williams continued, "The court has approved asset forfeiture proceedings that will ensure victim compensation takes priority over all other financial obligations." As my parents were led away in handcuffs, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and vindication. Justice had been served, but at the cost of permanently destroying my family relationships. Tyler and I were now effectively orphans, with both parents incarcerated for crimes that had torn our family apart. The restitution process moved more quickly than anyone had anticipated. Federal asset forfeiture laws allowed prosecutors to seize my parents' house, business equipment, vehicles, and financial accounts. The total value of seized assets exceeded $1.2 million, which was distributed among victims according to their documented losses. I received a restitution payment of $67,000, which covered my stolen college fund, fraudulent credit card debt, interest charges, legal fees, and penalty damages. The money arrived with a formal letter of apology from the federal prosecutor's office, acknowledging that no amount of financial compensation could restore the family relationships that had been destroyed by my parents' crimes. Tyler struggled emotionally with the aftermath of our parents' prosecution. Despite his cooperation with federal investigators, he battled feelings of guilt about testifying against our parents and anger about being manipulated into participating in their obstruction of justice efforts. "I keep wondering if there was something else I could have done," Tyler confided during one of our weekly coffee meetings. "Maybe if I had been smarter about their manipulation, or if I had supported you from the beginning." "Tyler, you were victimized just like I was," I assured him. "The difference was that they used different tactics against each of us. They stole from me directly, and they manipulated you into helping them cover up their crimes. With our parents incarcerated and our childhood home sold for restitution payments, Tyler and I had to rebuild our relationship on new foundations. We were no longer defined by our roles as children in a dysfunctional family. We were adults choosing to maintain a connection based on mutual respect and shared experiences." Sarah had become more than just a friend during the legal proceedings. Her unwavering support, legal expertise, and emotional intelligence had been crucial for my survival during the most difficult period of my life. When she offered to let me continue staying in her apartment while I figured out my next steps, I realized that she had become the sister I had always wanted. "You do not have to decide anything immediately," Sarah said as we discussed long-term living arrangements. "But I love having you here, and this place feels more like home with you in it." Jennifer and David had also become important parts of my chosen family. Our shared experience as victims of the criminal network had created bonds that went beyond typical cousin relationships. Jennifer's children had started calling me Aunt Madison, and I found myself spending holidays and family celebrations with them instead of struggling to maintain connections with my incarcerated parents. Amanda Morrison from the Attorney General's office had offered me a position as a victim advocate working with other families who had experienced financial abuse. My accounting background, combined with my personal experience as a victim, made me uniquely qualified to help others navigate the complex legal and financial processes involved in seeking justice. Victim advocacy is incredibly challenging work, Amanda warned me during our interview. You will be working with people who are experiencing the same betrayal and trauma that you survived. Are you emotionally prepared to relive those experiences through other people's cases? I think helping other victims find justice might be the best way to transform my own trauma into something meaningful, I replied honestly. The work was indeed challenging, but it provided a sense of purpose that had been missing from my life since returning from London. Each case I worked on reminded me that family financial abuse was far more common than most people realized, and that many victims never found the courage to seek justice. Tyler eventually decided to pursue a career in computer forensics, inspired by his experience with the federal investigation of our parents' criminal network. He wanted to help law enforcement agencies detect and prosecute financial crimes, particularly those involving digital evidence and online criminal networks. I figure if I am going to understand how criminals use technology, Tyler explained, I might as well use that knowledge to catch them instead of helping them. 3 years after my parents' sentencing, I received a letter from my father in federal prison. He wrote about attending mandatory counseling sessions, participating in victim impact programs, and beginning to understand the full scope of damage caused by the criminal network he had helped create. I know that no apology can undo what I did to you and so many other families, his letter concluded. I hope that someday you might be willing to visit me, not because I deserve forgiveness, but because I want to take responsibility for my actions and try to repair some of the damage I caused. I showed the letter to Sarah, Tyler, and Amanda, seeking their perspectives on whether I should respond. The consensus was that any communication with my father should be on my terms, focused on my healing needs rather than his desire for redemption. Forgiveness is not something you owe to anyone, Amanda reminded me. If and when you choose to engage with your father, it should be because doing so serves your own emotional healing, not because you feel obligated to help him feel better about his crimes. I decided to wait before responding to my father's letter. The wounds caused by his betrayal were still healing, and I was not ready to navigate the complex emotions involved in potentially rebuilding a relationship with someone who had systematically destroyed my trust and financial security. My mother had not attempted to contact me since her sentencing. According to updates from the Federal Probation Office, she was struggling more than my father with accepting responsibility for her crimes and continued to blame external circumstances for her criminal choices. Looking back on this entire experience, I realized that the greatest gift had been discovering who truly cared about my well-being when everything fell apart. Sarah, Jennifer, David, Amanda, and even Tyler had proven themselves to be more reliable family than the people who had given birth to me and raised me. Family is not defined by blood relationships, Sarah observed as we celebrated the 3rd anniversary of my parents' sentencing. Family is defined by people who show up for you when everything falls apart, who support your growth, and who choose to love you even when it is difficult. My chosen family had supported me through federal investigations, court proceedings, career transitions, and the ongoing process of rebuilding my life after systematic betrayal. They had proven that love and loyalty are choices that people make every day, not obligations that come automatically with shared genetics. As I continue working with other victims of family financial abuse, I am constantly reminded that justice is not just about punishment and restitution. Justice is also about truth, accountability, and the restoration of dignity that comes from refusing to accept abuse in silence. To anyone watching this story who has experienced similar betrayal by family members, please know that you deserve support, justice, and healing. Your family's crimes against you were not your fault, and seeking accountability does not make you a bad person. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to refuse to enable destructive behavior, even when that behavior comes from people who claim to love you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal justice when someone you trusted betrayed you? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself when everyone expected you to stay silent for the sake of family unity? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your story might give someone else the strength they need to seek the justice they deserve. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other victims find the courage to speak their truth. Subscribe for more stories about finding justice and building chosen family when biological family fails you. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than financial abuse disguised as family obligation. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to justice. Remember that healing is possible. Accountability is important, and you deserve relationships built on respect rather than exploitation. Until next time, keep choosing the people who choose you and never be afraid to demand the justice you deserve.